Mark, if you don't have any objections, let's go ahead and get into the lists.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, so let's start off with your number 5 Colt Classic Chiefs player of all time. Who do you got?
All right, I got Christian Okoye as number 5 on my list,
Mm,
which is he was like a pretty good player there at the end of the 80s, early 90s, starting running back. I think he made a Pro Bowl. He led the league in rushing one year. So he wasn't like a totally off the wall guy, but it's just one of those guys that came out of nowhere. He was like older when he got drafted. He played at Azusa Pacific College, NAIA school there in California, and just kind of his ascent to like this cult classic here in Kansas City. And he's still like a Chiefs ambassador.
yeah.
He hangs around Kansas City still. He's like one of those guys that goes out to events and stuff like that. And he was one of those guys that got a Super Bowl ring because they gave rings to all their Chiefs ambassadors. So it's cool seeing him still around the KC community. But when he was a player, like he had those shoulder pads that were like up past his ears, and he looked like more like a linebacker than a running back, just like bowling through guys. Like I don't even know how to describe his running style. I guess mean, downhill, whatever you want to say. But he was like Jerome Betts before Jerome Betts was a thing. Uh,
Oh yeah.
so yeah, that was my number 5. Christian. Oh yeah, and he was the first jersey that I ever owned as a
Oh yeah.
Chiefs fan when my family moved to Kansas City. So always will have a place in my heart for Christian Okoye.
I was telling you before we started the show that Christian Okoye, for some reason, I don't know why, and this might play into why you picked him as a Colt fan favorite, has always been my favorite Chiefs player. And it's not like that I really enjoy like running backs being my favorite players or any of that. I just always have gravitated towards like his play style. As you mentioned, he's a very rough and tumble type of running back, a guy who's built like a linebacker and had those giant shoulder pads. His character is like larger than life. Christian Okoye is always one of those guys. When people ask me, who's your favorite Chiefs player? I say, other than I'm like, okay, well, obviously Patrick Mahomes right now, but Christian Okoye, and they're like, who's that? And I'm like, okay, well, it's okay. Um, the Nigerian Nightmare is also a wonderful nickname.
Oh yeah.
That is just like one of the coolest nicknames out there, and I think that might also play into it because it just has a super cool nickname, and that's kind of what I think gets all this going is nicknames sometimes too.
Oh yeah.
Um, and hashtags, especially now in the age of the internet. And I was talking to Mark before we started the show. This might be the show where you can kind of see the age difference between Mark and I. You usually can't really tell, I don't think. But we might be able to tell because I think my youngest guy on here, I guess my oldest guy on here, was on like the 2007 team or 2008 team. So in
Real,
my lifetime, for me, yeah, these are my 5.
really quick, I need to amend something that I said. I think it said Jerome Betts. It's a Bettis, by the way. I missaid his name. So before somebody calls me out on that, it's Jerome Bettis.
Yeah, we're we're on top of it. You don't need to call us out. We got it. Because somebody would. So let's get into my top 5 here. This guy's still on the team, actually. I've got
Okay.
2 guys. Yeah, my 5 and my 4 are still on the team. Um, Number 5, Dorian O'Daniel. He has a weird cult following. We kind of talked about it before we started the show for not playing at all and
Special
kind of
teams
being
guy.
right, being a third, what is he, third round pick, second or third up in the top half of the draft. I know a lot of people have the hashtag free DOD when it comes to the linebackers and Ben Neiman. Devin Albertson, one of our MVLs, is a very big fan of the Dorian O'Daniel train. And I mean, I guess I can kind of see it, but I just think it's funny. I think it's one of those things where you're like, okay, we haven't seen this guy play at all, essentially. And there's
Yeah.
a lot of people who are very big fans of Dorian O'Daniel. And I think that was one that really stuck out to me kind of first when we talked about, Colt favorites.
Hey, that's a good pick, man. I gotta say, I was a big Dorian O'Daniel fan, like when they first drafted him too.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm in the cult classic like fan, but yeah, the way that we thought that he might be able to transition into like a cover linebacker, kind of a guy that can go take on those tight ends and those running backs. And I don't know what's going on with him. I guess he was drafted when before Steve Spagnuolo got here, but
Yeah.
I mean, I thought he'd be able to fit into this new system, but it just hasn't quite translated yet. I think he has one more year on his rookie
Mhm.
deal, possibly. So maybe he can get in next year for all those Dorian O'Daniel cult classic fans out there. They're crossing their fingers, hoping he can make it. But yeah, I guess we'll see what happens.